Well, Utah fans, good evening and welcome in to the Coaches Show presented by Smiths. We're coming to you live from the basketball offices here at the Huntsman basketball facility here on campus. It's great to have you in tonight. Those of you listening in tonight on your way home, or maybe not even on your way home. Maybe you've just been out and about tonight because you had the day off for MLK Day. Well, thanks for listening in on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700. Got a lot of you watching tonight on the University of Utah Athletics YouTube channel and, of course, on Twitch as well. It's great to have you in. Utah basketball back home this week, hosting the Washington Schools Thursday night, 6 o'clock, right across the way from where we are right now at the Huntsman Center. They'll entertain the Washington Huskies. And then at 5 o'clock on Saturday, they'll entertain the Washington State, the all of a sudden resurgent Washington State Cougars. That'll be coming up on Saturday. So in the meantime, we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about the trip to Arizona. We'll pass out some awards. We'll just talk a lot of Utah basketball with the head coach, Larry Krystkowiak. How are you?
Doing fine, Bill.
Doing good. Give me your summation now that you've had a couple of days to look back on that Arizona trip.
Well, I mean, you got to be really good on the road, particularly against Arizona. They'd come off a couple of losses, and I think we're finding out that life in the Pac-12 on the road is difficult, and we've just got to be a lot better in different areas, and then had our opportunities against Arizona State, but it's a combination. It's playing hard,
right?
Which we haven't done all the time, on that trip, and I really want to get back to building a mindset that it really is about the next possession, and I just see sometimes we get, a couple plays go haywire and it amounts into an 8-point run, those types of things, and finding a maturity to just stay in the play, into the scouting report. That's where the smart part comes into play, and then making sure that we play together. And I think, there were some good clips against Arizona State where we moved the ball. And at the end of the day, I've said this many times with you, you have to be able to knock down open shots when those occur, because they're hard to come by. And then I think, okay, we make some good plays, we miss those shots, and then we try to create some other things on our own and get sped up. And we looked like a team that was out of whack on the road. And I want to just get back to let's play hard and get after it and really kind of stay in the moment. I think sometimes it gets cloudy right now, and everybody's what's wrong, and it's not, oftentimes it's not a big picture thing. It's let's just dial into that hard, smart, and together again and simplify things. And with that, I think we'll find a little more confidence.
So I think you would agree. Last week we talked about it following the Colorado game. The energy and the zip wasn't really there early in that game, and they got on you early. And I think there was a little bit of that at Arizona, too, the energy, the enthusiasm to get after. But I thought your energy Saturday night was much better. I thought you came out with a lot of enthusiasm and energy. As you said, you just didn't make some shots early in that game.
Yeah, and it's a two-possession game at halftime, and we left, I think, a lot of meat on the bone to make it even more interesting. And it seemed like at those critical moments, to end a run or to start a run, again, you have to piece it together. There was a lot more heart, and I thought the energy level was good. Still had some guys that were a little bit out of whack, but it's improved. And I think one of the other elements to this whole thing is I'm pretty sure that after 5 games nobody's had a tougher road. When you've got to go to Colorado and the Arizonas on the road, and you have the Oregons at home. Those are some elite teams. They're the 3 or 4 of those teams are predicted to be in the top, 4 or 5 in our league. And you combine that with the teams we played in the preseason. We've gone through a stretch where things haven't necessarily clicked, but some of that's because the other team is pretty dang good. And we're kind of at the crossroads now with what we're going to do moving forward with 3 days of practice. I thought we had a good practice today. We've got to kind of find our mojo again and know that there's still going to be great players in this conference that we play, but maybe not, like Washington will be all zone. It'll be completely different. A shot-blocking, lengthy steal type of team, but it's not man-to-man offense. So we'll have to find a little different rhythm. But let's just get some home cooking, get back home, feel good, sleep in our beds, and try to do it collectively. We've got to do it collectively, and we've got to do it with a much greater sense of urgency than we had. But we're not we'll watch two teams play on the road that don't look so sharp either when you're scouting them, and then you say, yeah, but we're playing them at home now. So there is, with young kids, I think on all levels in our league, there's a little boost that people get at home, and we've just got to improve and get better on the road, but certainly come home and do the things that we're good at and find a little bit of that feel good again.
Sometimes stats don't tell the whole story, and sometimes they do. One stat in particular I thought Saturday told a pretty big chunk of the story, and that was the turnovers. You turned it over 18 times, 9 in each half, and they got, sometimes you can turn it over and the other team doesn't take advantage. Well, Arizona State took some advantage. I think they got 28 off those 18 turnovers.
14 in each half.
Yeah, 14 in each half. And that kind of spurred some runs. You'd get it close, and then there were back-to-back turnovers, and then all of a sudden it went from a 5-point game to a 12-point game, something like that. But
yeah.
I guess when you went back and looked at the clips, I didn't feel like in real time, and I haven't watched the game again yet, but I didn't feel like in real time a lot of those were necessarily forced turnovers. There were a couple where Remy Martin jumped the passing lane or ripped it out of Brandon's hands. But I kind of felt like a lot of those turnovers were guys either getting sped up or trying to do something that wasn't there. Is that how you saw it too?
Yeah, there was a little bit of everything. I thought
guys leaving their feet, throwing passes, guys trying to attack the basket maybe when it wasn't there.
Yeah, we had a couple charges where we ran guys over. We threw passes out of bounds. We should have chinned. There was one critical basket, I think, early, where we got a great stop. We had 4 guys on the defensive glass. They had 1. And, Riley kind of bobbled it. It went between his legs. The guy picked it up and laid it in. I mean, those are really disheartening type plays. And, at the end of the day, Booth bobbles a couple passes that are coming his way. And I do think you get a little bit out of whack. We've got to find some of that poise. But up until that point, the turnovers hadn't reared their head. And that's the thing. There's so many different facets to be successful in this game. I thought our half-court defense in the first half was as good as it's been a long time, with the exception of we lost track of Rob Edwards, who we knew couldn't have any separation, and Booth and Alfonso both had opportunities to be locked in, and they didn't. They stood up, they set screens, and he knocked down 3. So he had 3 or 4 threes at halftime. Otherwise, they're in the teens. They had 26 points at halftime. We weren't good offensively, but our defense was keeping us in the game. And then it kind of switched gears to, the turnovers. You can't defend those. And then, certain guys have to go to their right hand to make plays. And when you watch video, and our assistant coaches do a tremendous job, and you get to know your personnel sheets, and then we have those mental breakdowns on top of that, it just complicates itself, compounds. And we've got to be a lot cleaner. And then, like we talked about earlier, then when you get open looks, got to knock them down. And, TA's got to be stronger around the basket and, different things. And all I know is each possession is super important. And that's what I'm asking our guys to do is let's get down in a stance. Let's make sure we're playing our butts off, trying to pay attention to the scouting report and win this possession. Get the rebound, and then we'll go worry about the next one. And definitely shorten some of the confusion to more, hey, it's in the moment right now. And so I'm confident. Our guys, we've been in positions like this before, and it's not time to to play victim and have a pity party. You got to work your way out of it. We've had a number of individual meetings with guys, and I know that our team got together in a meeting today, and that at some point, though, we've got to get on the floor when you've got 40 minutes. We had one of our best practices of the year Friday in Phoenix the day between games. And when you're doing all of this work for your 40-minute opportunity to play, and sometimes I think we put an awful lot of time and effort into a lot of the other things, and then when it comes time to tip off, man, that's when you've got a little steam coming out of your ears, and we've got to be dialed in and want it a lot more and know that in this conference it's going to be challenging, and it's okay if things don't go your way, but let's stay in the fight.
It's funny you mentioned that about Timmy, because he sat down with us on the post-game show, and before we even went on the air, he put the headset on. He goes, I left a lot out there tonight. He said, I've got to be better. He said, I left a lot out there. And he's right. I mean, there were a lot of opportunities, whether they were free throws or plays around the basket, that he left out there. He recognizes it and he knows it, but he didn't need to see any clips to know that he could have been better the other night.
Yes, and he cares, and he made, I think, and in talking to him, and I know to start that game, he made some terrific passes. And so he's buying into the one thing. Dave ran a bunch of numbers today. When Timmy passes the ball, this is in conference play, when he passes the ball, we as a team shoot 50%, which would rank 4th in the country. So, and he did that early in the game. He found Jackson for a 3 on a post play, hit Riley for an open 3, and we missed him. And I think it's just important that we're always going to continue to make the play that the game presents. And maybe Timmy is saying, man, I tried that pass. Now I got to go do this myself. And that's oftentimes when 2 or 3 guys are coming, and then it gets a little physical, and it's harder to score. So I think if everybody will stay in their lane and keep doing what makes us good, we'll be a lot better off. You get in, an environment on the road where things get out of whack, and we've got to grow as a team and make sure that we stay committed to doing what gives us the best probability of having some success.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what happened with the ejection. I've seen you get technicals before, but I've not seen that.
Yeah. I felt really bad. I had no problem. I wasn't. I was asked after the game, were you frustrated from the last? No, that wasn't it at all. I'm a big fan of all of our guys, but when Matt, gets a dunk like that in that environment, I think that's I don't think anybody knows what it's like to be 7'4" when you've got a guy down in your knees. So you are allowed to hang on the rim, and I just thought that I wanted to stand up for Matt. I wanted to stand up for our team. I didn't think it was the time and the place to try to take some of the shine off that moment for him. It felt like it was a little bit of an under the belt, kind of shot, and I had a hard time controlling my emotions.
The game was out of hand by then. It was decided. You had put Matt and some of the guys in.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on that. I think it was a 50. I guess in the spirit of the rule, you probably could have, but there was probably no reason at that point in time to let it happen. And so I saw where you were coming from on that.
Yeah, and I just felt bad for our guys, and that's one of those things that happens pretty fast. I certainly didn't have any time to think about it, and could have controlled. I'm trying to do a lot better job of controlling myself with those types of things, but had an early exit. That's why we didn't get the visit after the game. I was out licking my wounds on the bus.
I figured you were walking out to the hotel. I figured you just took off and started walking off a little steam back to the hotel.
Yeah, no. It's part of the game.
It is. It happens from time to time.
Yep.
I was happy for Matt to get in there and do that. And the other thing, too, is if anybody's ever been around Matt Van Komen, there was no malice. There was no nothing. That kid just got a chance to throw the dunk down, and he did.
Yeah, and looking at it, he was off balance. He had hung on the rim. If he lets go of the rim, he falls on his keister, and his feet came up, and I think he was trying to figure out why his feet weren't on the ground. And the guy's body was there, and it ended up, it wasn't a wrestling move where he was trying to put him in a figure 4 headlock or anything. It was just
and there was no
physics.
Stare down or talk or anything like that.
No, quite the opposite. The other guy wanted a piece of Matt. He was taking off running down the floor. So one of those things, and I'll do a better job. We all need to do a better job. I'll do a better job in that case, and trying to come up with a plan for our guys. And as the players know, players have to make plays, and we'll all be better.
We'll take our first time out here on the Coaches Show. When we come back, weekly awards, we'll pass them out from last week. We'll talk about some guys that had some good games and some guys that need to get a little bit better as things go along. And look ahead to the Washington schools who come in this week. Our show today being brought to you by Smith's, obviously, but also by Anheuser-Busch. Game days, better with a crisp Bud Light at your disposal. Keep it crisp, Utah fans, and drink responsibly with Bud Light. First time out, back with more on the other side. This is Utah basketball from Learfield IMG College. basketball with head coach Larry Krystkowiak. It's brought to us by Smith's. Utes back home this week, hoping for some home cooking at the Huntsman. 6 o'clock, a little early. That's that early start time on Thursday. Followed by a 5 o'clock, which is actually Saturday's a great time. 5 o'clock, get all those errands out of the way, your chores out of the way, get your kids to all their basketball and volleyball games all day, and then hit it and then still have time to get a little dinner after the game. So 5 o'clock Saturday against Wazoo and 6 o'clock on Thursday night. So let's pass out our team awards of the week. We need our player of the week and our sub of the week. Our player of the week brought to us by University of Utah Health and Sports Medicine. Who do you want to go with?
We'll go with Timmy. Timmy Allen, yep.
Yeah.
Competed both games. Was solid in both ball games for us, and thought he kept his composure really well in the Arizona State game. Things weren't going great, but he was keeping guys uplifted. Besides saddling him up and needing defense out of him and playing hard and trying to score some points and be a playmaker on our team. The other thing that's really important is to continue to provide leadership, and that's hard. It's hard when that much is thrown at you. And the thing we have to remember is even our veteran guys are sophomores, and some of this is happening pretty fast. It's important for everybody to keep growing and to certainly stay together. And I think Timmy's doing a really nice job of that. So
I wanted to ask you about something with Timmy because I know you see it. Jimmy and I were talking about it after we talked about it in a few games. And maybe it's just you've got to establish yourself a little bit more in the league. Most of Timmy's game is going at the basket. He's not a jump shooter per se. That's not really his game. Mid-range, but a lot of times he's driving. And it really seems to me that, again, from my perspective, there's a lot of contact on a lot of the plays that he goes to the basket on. And he doesn't get the whistle a lot. He'll get it sometimes compared to maybe some other players that you see. And I'm just curious, when you go back and watch the clips, if you're seeing the contact too, and maybe it's a matter of the way he's attacking, maybe he's not been around the league long enough. I'm just curious from your vantage point on, and I'm not asking you to call anybody out specifically on calls, but it seems like there's a lot of contact with his game, and there sometimes isn't the whistle to go with that.
No, that's a great question, and there's certain people, referees have a job to do, and there's certain people that make that more challenging for a ref.
Okay.
And I think even as a player back in the day, that I was one of those people that was hard to ref, certainly in college, because there was going to be some contact, and Timmy's taking it at guys, and creating some opportunities. But I think the thing that's the most troublesome for me that's happened a little bit is when he gets around the basket, the arms straight up mentality. Here's what happens in slow motion, and when you see it live, it's two different things. Is I'm guarding Timmy and my arms are certainly forward, probably I don't know what the degrees would be. I guess 90 degrees would be straight up.
So go 45 degrees.
And we're talking maybe not quite that much, but the hands are down. And then he'll turn and make his move. And as he makes his move, there's significant contact with the arms that aren't straight up. But by the time he's done with his shot, there's the arms that are straight up. And I think that's the snapshot that officials are thinking of a lot of times. There were 3 in the first half that were that way. It's really good wall defense, but to be a really good wall defender, you have to have your hands vertical to begin with, and they're not all the time, and it happens pretty fast. So that's one of the things I would hope that referees understand. It's that cylinder thing. If he's allowed to go up and shoot, and I completely get it. If that person is straight up and down and he runs into somebody's arm or something, that's fine. But he's trying to, in a shooting motion, running into some arms. That's certainly got to be a foul. But I can tell you that when you see it live, because I watch it on video live, and it's harder to pick up, and then you watch it in slow motion, and you say, man, no wonder he missed that shot. That was a lot of arm, into his body. So it's just one of those bang things that refs are going to have to be dialed into, and hopefully we're a little bit stronger to make some of those plays and know it's going to be a challenge.
Timmy's still one of the top scorers of the Pac-12 Conference heading into this week. That team player brought to you by University of Utah Health and Sports Medicine. Find them at uofuhealth.org. All right, Subway Sub of the Week, and this was the easy one for me, and it's a guy that hasn't played a lot since conference play began, but you went to him at Arizona, and he gave you a really nice lift late in the game, and then you went to him even earlier against Arizona State on Saturday night.
Yeah, he's given us a spark. Alfonso plays really hard.
Yeah.
There's been so much teaching with our team, and the system is completely new. The reality is, and some guys are different. There's some players that play so well in a practice setting, and then they get into the bright lights of a game and maybe take a step back. DeLon, his junior year, wasn't a very good practice player. And then all of a sudden, man, the popcorn would start popping, and he would make some plays, and I can remember looking at each other like, man, this kid's a gamer. Some guys are gamers, and I think Alfonso's got a little bit of that in him when he doesn't have to think, when there's not an in-your-face kind of coaching and trying to help him through some stuff, but when he can kind of go out and trust his instincts. And we needed a little scoring punch, and he gave that to us in both games. Gaining some confidence, and I think he's improving. He's trying his butt off on defense, but he's still got some things to figure out there. But yeah, he stayed with us the whole time. Sometimes guys kind of shut it down when it gets going hard, and don't come engaged to practice, and don't stay with your teammates. And so he's done a lot of the right things, and I think it's not atypical for a junior college player to start having the light bulb come on right about now, and we're going to lean on him to play and to give us a little bit of a scoring punch. I was really proud of him this weekend.
Yeah, he did a really nice job. Got a 4-point play in one game, knocked down a couple of big 3-pointers. And I'll tell you one thing that he does, it's a skill set that I don't care what level you're at, it's not easy to do. There's a lot of guys that are really good catch-and-shoot guys, and he can do that. But his ability to run off a screen on a curl at full speed, catch the ball and shoot at the same time. And a lot of times it's going the other way, away from the basket. It isn't always going right at the basket. Your momentum's carrying you back and away.
Right.
And he lets that thing go. And I'll tell you what, that's not an easy skill set at full speed to do. And he's got it.
Yeah.
He can do that.
Yeah, and it looks good, too. A lefty, he's got that look. There's not too many. I don't recall seeing too many lefties playing the game that don't have the stroke. And it looks like it's going in. I think he struggled with his confidence a few weeks back, and I've never, since I've been here, ever had to tell somebody to take open shots. Sometimes he's a little bit undersized, so he kind of hesitates. He did that in the game against Arizona State, was wide open and should have just shot it, and he gave it a little pump fake, and it actually allowed a longer guy to get to him, and then the second one became harder.
Yeah.
So, he's in practice, he's stroking it in practice. He's got the green light to take good shots and to keep working on his D, and he'll be a big part of what we're trying to do.
So he's going to be our Subway Sub of the Week this week from Subway Restaurants, where right now if you buy the footlong of the day, you'll get chips, 2 cookies, and a 20-ounce drink for free at Subway. We'll talk a little bit about the first opponent this week coming up on the other side. That's the Washington Huskies. They're a relatively young team. They had some guys go early to the NBA, and a couple of guys that had been there for a long time finally graduate, but they're talented. So we'll talk a little bit about Mike Hopkins' Huskies and that matchup zone next, right here from Learfield, IMG College. Radio Home, ESPN 700. On the Athletics YouTube channel from Utah Athletics, and, of course, on Twitch as well. Good to have you guys with us tonight. Game sponsor on Thursday night when the Washington Huskies come in. That's Wells Fargo. They're proud to be proud sponsors of Utah basketball. This is Wells Fargo. Washington is the opponent, Larry, coming up on Thursday night. Mike Hopkins' team, 12-7 overall. They're 2-4 in Pac-12 play. Looked like they had it going against Oregon on Saturday. The Ducks up there in Seattle, and they had a 15, 16-point second-half lead, and then the Ducks threw a little pressure at them. They don't have their point guard right now. He's out, and they struggled with the pressure, and then Oregon made some shots, and Washington went cold, and Ducks
missed free throws.
And missed some free throws, and the Ducks got them in overtime.
Yeah, that was a heck of a game. There were a number of those games on Saturday. Stanford had a 20-point lead at USC and ended up losing in overtime. So there's nothing safe, and certainly have to close. But that's this Washington team is, got a bunch of thoroughbreds. Certainly Stewart is the man inside. We were joking off air that he makes the Oregon guys, and we know that they're a big team, look small, and so they throw it to him. He's been playing with a heck of a lot of confidence, and they've got a bunch of athletes in that 2-3 zone. It's long, it creates turnovers, and they also are one of the elite shot blocking teams in our conference and in the country as well. So they certainly hang their hat on defense, and it's going to be a new challenge for us. We haven't seen the zone in quite a while, and it's got to flip the switch and make sure if we hang our hat on trying to get some stops, we're so much better when we can get out and transition, and hopefully we can get back to doing that. Let's really focus on the defensive end of things, and then I think we've got a plan, some different looks to throw at that matchup to make some plays, and you have to be willing to move the ball, extra pass. It's a big extra pass night. You're not going to just take it right at them and finish at the rim with some of the length that they have down there and athleticism.
Well, you've seen some big guys this year, and you've seen some guys that are big guys that can step out on the floor. That's not really Isaiah Stewart's game. He's a play in the paint kind of a guy, and as you mentioned, he's an NBA, likely a one-and-done guy. So how, as you've watched him and played him, how do you handle a guy like that? Because you don't have, at least this year, that kind of size with experience to match up with him. You've gone a little bit smaller and had some success. So what's the approach against a player like Stewart?
Well, I think first and foremost, the saying that exists in basketball, well, in life in general, is to do your work early.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing catch up to him or you're reacting to something that he's done, there's a pretty good chance he's already got us in a bad way down in the torture chamber where he's not going to be guardable. And he's dang near an 80% free throw shooter, so that's an elite stat for a big guy, especially in today's age. Usually when you see somebody that big, they don't look comfortable at the line, and he'll make you pay from the line as well. So we've got to be aware, conscientious of where he is at all times, try to keep a body on him, and then, we'll probably throw a couple different double teams at him to try to keep him off balance. But one of the things, when that ball gets penetrated in the post or off their drive, they're a really good offensive rebounding team as well, and they get those guys flying in from all angles. So it's going to be a post plan on him, but then with the conversion and different things that are going on, we've got to do a much better job of blocking out the rest of them, and certainly even Stewart getting his own misses.
Yeah, he averages 9 rebounds a game. He's really good on that side of it. A bunch of offensive rebounds, too. About a third of his rebounds are offensive rebounds.
Yep.
And then the guys you mentioned, guys like Naz Carter and Hamir Wright and McDaniels, who will just go crash, and they've got a lot of bounce to them.
They do, and to try to neutralize that, or negate that, we've got to, I think the key is going to be, we did a much better job of Arizona State in blocking out. We just got to secure some of those bobbled ones. But the rest of it's league-wide. I mean, it was Colorado, it was Arizona. We've got to do a much better job of having 5 guys block out, and also the awareness when you don't put a body on somebody and you're not required, you can maybe go help one of those bigs as a guard, and we've got to get in and free rebound and get everybody on that mindset to finish a possession.
They lost their point guard about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Quade Green, the transfer from Kentucky, and he was the guy that had the ball in his hand a lot. He was kind of the set it up type guy. Have they looked much different since they've lost him? How are they running the point now?
Well, I can't think of the young man's name.
Number 15, Jonas.
Yeah, he's got the ball in his hands a lot. I mean, I think the key for them is to get the ball up the court and get it inside. That's what we're seeing an awful lot of. But, they did lose a quality ball handler and a three-point threat. Green was also, one of the guys that was making the majority of their threes. So that was an academic issue for them, his inability to stay eligible. But, there's other guys that are stepping up. They've got guys just like any team would have when you lose somebody, maybe not at that quality, but I think they're kind of doing it by committee more than anything. And then we've even seen an increased focus to get the ball inside to some of those bigs.
The other thing with Washington is their matchup zone. They just play that. It's 40 minutes. They never come out of it. It's Hopkins got it at Syracuse with Boeheim, and they never come out of it either. And it's been really effective. What's made it really effective the last 2 years was Matisse Thybulle. Thybulle was the point man on that. He's now thriving in the NBA, doing the exact same thing, jumping in passing lanes and doing his thing. So who plays the Thybulle role there, and how much different is it without him in that zone?
Well, it's different. There's no question. Those other kids have a lot of length and athleticism, and they get from point A to point B really fast. I'm not sure that the four of them couldn't hold hands and cover the width of the court as it is. That's the blueprint that they've recruited to. It's nice to see Thybulle sneaking in behind Russell Westbrook now and stripping him of shots.
Makes you feel a little bit better about that, knowing he's doing it to other guys.
Yeah, like we weren't losing our mind. He was a really unique dude, in a lot of ways, and a great kid. So, that takes a little bit of that steam out of the zone, but they're still getting a lot of turnovers out of it in passing lanes. And stirring some things up with block shots. So it's maybe on their end it's not as individual. David Crisp wasn't a big, long, lengthy guy, but he could knock down threes. He's gone. And Thybulle's gone with his ability, but now you've got a bunch of guys that can get on the rim in no time, and they've got the defense figured out collectively without maybe the elite guy in there that made such a difference that Matisse did.
Is the key to that playing that team still getting somebody in the middle of that zone that can either hit the shot or throw it to an open three-point shooter?
Well, I think, we even watch Syracuse play. There's not a lot of changes that are made. You have to have a high post threat to be effective. I can remember a few years back when we went into Washington and beat them there.
Ty Rawson.
Yeah, Tyler Rawson was a terrific high post player. And, there's so many different places you can pass out of there. It can be a high-low, skip to the corner, even at times to just kind of pivot around and right where the ball came from. And we've been working on some of those drills this year. These guys haven't seen it, but Ty was an elite player. And then last year when we played at Washington, we didn't have Timmy. He was out with a back injury, so he didn't get an opportunity to play in there. And he might have been one of our best weapons to do that. So we were a little dysfunctional a year ago, but we need multiple guys that can get in there and put some heat on them and kind of collapse the D and then make the appropriate pass without any kind of deflections.
It's the only time we see Washington in the regular season this year. No trip to Seattle this year, which I know you and I both will miss. We like that trip to Seattle.
We do.
Is Jeff coming down to watch you play here?
I don't know. They just announced this
the big tour.
Big tour, so they're in the gym practicing, working on turnovers and transitions and different things. So I told them to be practicing hard, that I was going to try to catch a few shows. So,
yeah. Well, we're talking about Pearl Jam, and Larry's friend Jeff Amen, who's the bassist for Pearl Jam, who usually is up there watching us play Washington. 6 o'clock Thursday night. Take a break. Back on the other side. Wazoo's on Saturday, and they've played a little bit better. Quick thought on them and some other conference stuff ahead here on Learfield IMG College. On Thursday, welcome back into the Coaches Show. That game brought to you by Wells Fargo. Saturday's game's Washington State. It's being brought to you by the Larry H. Miller dealerships. Put the mobile in automobile. I like that. Find it online at lhmauto.com. Larry H. Miller dealerships driven by you. Just to accentuate, I feel like we've said this the last couple of years. The conference, once you get into, and a lot of conferences are like this, but the Pac-12 especially. There's no secrets and things get crazy. Washington State wasn't great early in conference play. Then all of a sudden they jump up last weekend and they sweep the Oregon schools in Pullman. Beat Oregon on Thursday night, and then they hammered Oregon State the other day up there when Klay Thompson and Steph Curry were up there for his jersey retirement. So it looks like Kyle Smith, who you got to see a few years back when he was at San Francisco, has got those guys organized pretty well.
Yeah, he's a quality coach, and I some of that stuff's just a matter of time before they can work some kinks out with the new staff. CJ Ellenby is a high production guy. They give him the ball a lot.
He was named Pac-12 Player of the Week this week.
Yeah, and was certainly, the impetus for their success. And they had another young man, a freshman, that had 30 or something against Oregon State.
His name is Isaac Bonton.
Yeah.
Bonton, Isaac Bonton.
So I've seen him play a couple times, Bill, but my focus, yesterday and today since we left Arizona has been on the Huskies.
Yeah.
And we will have some catching up to do. We've got our staff working to see exactly what it is they're trying to do with the new coach. There's a bunch of new terminology, but they do have some of the guys back. I know Pollard, the big boy from Utah's playing 36 to 40 minutes a game, so he's providing some beef in the post for them, and I know they're going to defend, and he's a quality coach, so I'm not surprised to see them have some success.
So Washington State Saturday, that's a 5 o'clock tip-off at the Huntsman Center and presented by the Larry H. Miller dealership. C.J. Ellenby, one of the guys on the all-hair team, and there's a lot of guys qualifying for that all-hair team in the Pac-12 this year. Ellenby really good. He averaged a double-double last week in their wins over Oregon and Oregon State. Timeout. We'll come back, take a look around the league a little bit, and head forward. It's the Coaches Show from Learfield, IMG College. tonight, Washington on Thursday, and then Washington State coming up on Saturday. This league right now, Larry, it's hard to figure. There's upsets happening all over the place. You got teams that are struggling a little bit. You guys are kind of in that category. Washington, a little bit in that category, but UCLA in that category, and then you've got some teams that have jumped up and surprised some people. You know, I know that Stanford blew that big lead the other day, but they had been playing very good basketball. I mentioned Washington State the last week and a half has kind of come on just a little bit. So,
well, and the sample size is not great.
No, it's not
five
huge.
games in, and you can have, or 6 games in for some teams with 4 home games. You know, so it hasn't really settled, completely in for all the teams. But I think it's pretty evident that you better bring your A game, every single night.
Well, I think it kind of validates, though, what the non-conference season was, because the Pac-12 had a really good non-conference season. Even some of the teams that were down lower in the conference. I think the overall number in non-conference, I think the league won 75 or 78. 75% of its games.
Yeah.
And so you were like, okay, what does that mean? Well, now you've gotten into conference play, and now you're beginning to see, okay, yeah, there's no secrets, as you always like to say, but that kind of validates what some of the success of the non-conference season was, because now some of these teams that didn't have a lot are winning games.
And I think if I looked at it correctly today, Bill, four of our conference teams are in the top 20 in net.
Okay. Stanford
and Colorado,
Oregon,
and maybe USC. Anyway, So when we've got a bunch of opportunities to get those quad 1 wins with those teams, and that's what you need on a resume. And maybe in years past we kind of cannibalized each other because we didn't have a great enough preseason, and now it's okay that you're beating up on each other. As miserable as things have been for us, and none of us feel good about where we are, we're still 80 in the net. So it's not insurmountable to climb ourselves back into that, the top 50 or 60.
1 or 2 big wins or 2 or 3 wins in general, you can jump 20 or 25 spots.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens. And then, again, conversely, with a bad loss or 2, you can drop 20 or 25 spots. So it's all right there. I'm curious, you've got such a young team. All of these guys, when you come from high school or AAU, you were good because you were the star of your team and you're a Division I college basketball player. Most of these guys aren't used to losing 2 or 3 or 4 games in a row. How do you approach that with them? And do you see that in them after a loss when you've been around basketball as long as you have, and you've had the ups and the downs, you've had all of it? Most of these kids, when they come to college, have never really experienced much but success.
Right.
So how do you deal with that with these freshmen and some of the sophomores when they're not used to losing more than 1 or 2 games in a row?
Well, I think the biggest thing, again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It becomes this big dark cloud that hangs over your head, and you've got a couple of choices you can make when you roll into a practice. Like, it's woe is me, this is hard, this isn't what's going on, and start questioning, having doubts about yourself, about what we're doing, about your teammates. And to me, it gets back to the basics of just having a strong belief in what it is we're trying to do and make sure that we're playing the game the right way. And okay, all of this stuff's going on, we can talk about all of it, but let's just try to win the next point. Whether we're on offense or defense, let's try to make and play the game the right way. And we've always done that, whether we've had a 6-win team or a 28-win team. Our approach in practice is always the same. It's got a little bit of a grit, grind mentality, which we need to get better at. You need to outlast some people. And, nobody said this was supposed to be easy. That's the reality. Life's this way. Sports gives you an opportunity to learn a bunch of these lessons without being in the general population, and maybe you don't have some of the ups and downs. But as my doctor used to say, and I tell our players all the time, if it doesn't kill you, it's just going to make you stronger. And so let's buy into that and make sure that we stay connected as a group, and the wins and losses will take care of themselves.
Tonight's show being brought to you by our friends at Pepsi and Code Red Mountain Dew. Grab yourself one as you get ready for your next Utah basketball game, the official soft drink of Utah basketball. Back to wrap it up next on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's from Learfield IMG College. Super Bowl matchup? My Chiefs, Niners?
Yeah, it should be great.
I think so.
Two fun teams to watch. I have to say I'm excited that it's not the same.
Yeah.
And, man, San Francisco turned things around in 1 year.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
It's amazing. You had a couple of key pieces, and then all of a sudden, man, oh, man.
Yeah.
Takes off for you.
They're both fun teams to watch.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
What are you playing on your guitar right now? What's the song you're working hardest on right now? If I were to go back in the office, what's the book open to?
Well, I'm still trying to. I've always wanted to learn "Wish You Were Here" from start to finish.
Okay.
I've kind of got the beginning of that down, and then "Horse with No Name."
Little America?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll plug in the amp when we're done, and I'll see if you can recognize it.
All right. We'll go back and do a little guitar with Larry. Maybe we'll have him bring out the guitar next time. You guys enjoy it. We'll talk to you Thursday night from the Huntsman Center, Utah and Washington at 6 from Learfield IMG College. Good night.